Okay, so this is the key to section 10.4 part F, and then in the first part of this worksheet, you're asked to determine whether each pair of points, each pair of lines, so you have three pairs here, and you want to determine if those two lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither parallel nor perpendicular. All right, so if you notice though that these lines, these equations rather, are already in slope-intercept form. So it helps if you have it in slope-intercept form. And remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So y equals mx plus b. So once you get y by itself, you can easily determine the slope. So the slope is a coefficient of x, and then the constant, which we denoted here as the letter b, is the y-intercept. All right, so notice that here, for this one, the slope is 3/4, and here the slope is a negative 3/4. So that's the coefficient of x here is negative 3/4. So if you look at those two slopes, they're not the same, so they cannot be parallel, and they're not perpendicular because their slopes are not negative reciprocals. So this one's positive, this one's negative, but not reciprocals of each other. So this is 3/4, 3/4. Okay? So that means that these two lines are not going to be parallel, and they're not going to be perpendicular. So they're going to be any line that will intersect. All right. So they're going to intersect, but they won't intersect at right angles. All right. So that's what that means. So you're going to say neither. So they're neither parallel because they don't have the same slope, and they're not going to intersect at right angles because their slopes are not negative reciprocals of each other, so they're not perpendicular. So they're going to intersect at some other angle except a 90-degree angle, so we say neither. Over here, the slope is 2/5 and the slope is 2/5. So that means that when you draw these lines, and notice that whenever you draw this graph, it's going to cross the intersect the y-axis at -7 because that's your y-intercept. Here, remember that there's no constant there, so this is to be +0. So this one is going to cross the y-axis or intersect the y-axis at the origin, so at 0. But that idea, you really didn't have to know anything about the y-intercept. You just have to look at the slope. But the slopes are, since slopes are the same, the lines are parallel. So they can be parallel. So these lines are parallel. They won't intersect at all. Remember, parallel lines don't intersect. They have the same slope. They don't intersect. Okay, over here, the slope is 3. And over here, for this equation, the slope is -1/3. So notice that these two slopes are negative reciprocals, where the reciprocal of 3/1 is 1/3, and this is positive, this is negative. So these lines are perpendicular. All right. So these two lines are neither parallel nor perpendicular. These two lines are parallel, and these two lines are perpendicular. All right. So in number 4, 5, 6, and 7, you want to determine whether each pair of lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So the same like this. This part was easy though because it was already in slope-intercept form. Notice the variable y was already by itself. So these were already in slope-intercept form. Here, some of these are not in slope-intercept form. This one is, this one's not. Okay, so you have to get them in slope-intercept form before you can determine the slope. So let's look at number 4. So number 4, this is already in slope-intercept form, so the slope is 3. Over here it's not, so we got to do a little bit of work to get that in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. So this is number 4. We're going to rewrite 3x plus y equal 2 in slope-intercept form. So remember, the idea of slope-intercept form is to get y by itself. So I got to remove that term 3x from the side. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. And so 3x subtract 3x is 0, so I get y equals. And I'm going to put this in, I'm going to write the x term first. That'll be y equals -3x plus 2. So y equals -3x plus 2. So this right here becomes y equals -3x plus 2. That means that the slope is -3. All right, now notice that these two slopes are not the same, so these lines are not parallel. They're not negative reciprocals of each other, so they're not perpendicular, so you can say neither. So when you draw those lines, if you were to graph those lines, you would notice that they would not be parallel, and they would not intersect at right angles. All right, over here, so this one's easy right here. It's already in slope-intercept form, so that line has slope -2. All right, now I'm going to get over here for number 5. We have to rewrite this so that the equation is in slope-intercept form. So x subtract 2y equal 8. So there are a couple of ways you could do this. You could subtract x from both sides first. You can do it that way. Combine like terms at 0. You're left with, though, you got to be careful, that's -2y equal -x plus 8. All right, then you got to get y by itself. So we have to divide both sides by -2. I'm just rewriting this over. So I'm going to divide this side by -2 and this side by -2. So -2 divided by -2 is 1. 1 times y is y. Now when you do this one, remember you want to rewrite this as two separate fractions. So this is negative. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this just like you see it. -x over -2. I'm writing this first, and I'm going to change this. Plus 8 divided by -2. That's what we see. That's what we have. Now remember, a negative divided by negative is a positive. And then when you want to rewrite, see this will be positive. So you want to rewrite this though, x over 2 as 1/2 x. Because remember that right here is understood to be x over 2. That x right here that's in the numerator that has a coefficient of 1. So you want to rewrite x over 2 is 1/2 x. Otherwise, you will probably say that the slope is 1 and it's not 1. The slope is 1/2. All right, so you got to be careful. So this becomes y equals 1/2 x minus 4, because 8 divided by -2 is a -4. So this equation right here, that becomes y equals 1/2 x minus 4. All right. Now, I don't know if any of you did it this other way, but you could have done this. Let me go ahead and rewrite this over. So you see how we subtracted x from both sides? You could have brought the y term to the other side. So you could have said add 2y to both sides. Combine like terms. I got x equal 2y plus 8. And remember, you got to get y by itself. So let's subtract 8 from both sides. So I get x minus 8 equal 2y. And then we have to divide both sides by 2. So x minus 8 equal 2y. And then just like we did here, we brought into two fractions. So we get x divided by 2 minus 8 divided by 2 equal, and then remember 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 times y is y. But remember, if you got to rewrite this x over 2, because if you don't, you got to say the coefficient is 1 and it's not 1. The coefficient of x is really 1 over 2. That's the coefficient of x. Minus 4 equal y. Okay? So it didn't matter whether you brought the y term to the right side or you left it on the left side. You would get the same equation for y when you write it in slope-intercept form. So in slope-intercept form, this equation right here becomes y equals 1/2 x minus 4, and so therefore the slope of that line is 1/2. Now compare these two slopes. These two slopes are negative reciprocals of each other. This reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. This is positive. This becomes negative. So these two lines would be perpendicular. All right. Number 6. All right. Neither of those have, if you look at these, both of those equations are not in slope-intercept form. So let's look at the first one. So this will be number 6. Number 6, we have 3x equal 2y plus 7. All right, so I'm going to get this in slope-intercept form, so I can get y by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 7 from both sides. And so I get 3x minus 7 equal 2y. All right, so then I can be careful. Don't say the slope is 3, because it's not. You got to get y by itself. Alright, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2. That's a y. And then rewrite this as two separate fractions. So that becomes 3 halves x minus 7 halves equals, and then y. All right, so there's your equation in slope-intercept form. All right, so now you know the slope. The slope is a coefficient of x. Once you get y by itself, once you have it in slope-intercept form, the slope is a coefficient of x. So the coefficient of x is 3 halves. So here the slope is 3 halves. All right, now we got to work on the next one. So negative 9x plus 6y equal negative 4. All right, so we got to get this y by itself. So I'm going to add, since this is a negative 9x, I'm going to go ahead and add 9x to both sides. Combine like terms, negative 9x and positive 9x is 0. I'm left with 6y equal 9x minus 4. All right, then we're going to divide both sides by 6 to get y by itself, so we can put it in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this over. Divide both sides by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 1 times y is y equal. And then rewrite this as two fractions, and then we're going to reduce in the end. So that's going to be 9 6x minus 4 divided by 6. And then reduce. So that becomes y equals 3 halves x minus 2/3. 3 halves x minus 2/3. They're both divisible by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Here, these two, the numerator and denominator, are both divisible by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So the slope of this line here is 3 halves that we just found. So here, the slope is 3 halves. So remember, this right here, that became, what was that? So it was y equal 3 halves x minus 7 halves. That's what this one was. And then this line here was y equals 3 halves x minus 2/3. All right. So notice that these two lines are parallel. This line intersects the y-axis at 7 halves, and this intersects the y-axis at 2/3. But all you need to know is the slope of those two lines. The slope of those two lines are the same. They're both 3 halves. So those two lines are parallel. All right, number 7. So again, if you notice that none of these are in slope-intercept form, so you got to get them in slope-intercept form. The first one's easy to deal with right away. So let's look at the first equation. Negative 9x minus 4x equals 3y. All right, so all I got to do is just divide both sides by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, so I get y equal, and just rewrite this as two separate fractions, but I'm going to put the x term first. This is going to be, let me just go ahead and rewrite this as negative 4x minus 9 divided by 3. So negative 4x minus 9 divided by 3, that's the numerator. So this is going to become negative 4/3 x, so y equals negative 4/3 x minus 9 divided by 3. I can simplify 9 divided by 3, so that becomes y equals negative 4/3 x minus 3. All right, so the slope of this line is negative 4/3, the coefficient of x. Once you get this in slope-intercept form, the coefficient of x is negative 4/3. So in the first equation, this became y equal negative 4/3 x minus 3. So the slope is negative 4/3. All right, the next equation, we have negative 3x plus 4y equal 8. All right, so to get y by itself, I'm going to go ahead and add 3x to both sides. Combine like terms, this is 0. Negative 3x and 3x is 0. So I get 4y equal 3x plus 8. Rewrite this so the x term is first. And then all you have to do now is divide both sides by 4. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. And I'm going to divide by 4. And then 4 divided by 4 is 1. 1 times y is y. And write this as two separate fractions. So 3 fourths x plus 8 divided by 4, which equals, let's go ahead and reduce 8 divided by 4, so that's 3 fourths x plus 2. All right, so this equation right here, this equation, that equation here becomes y equals 3 fourths x plus 2. So the slope is 3 fourths. All right, so now compare these two slopes. So this slope is negative 4 thirds, this slope is a positive 3 fourths. Notice one's positive, one's negative, one's positive, and the reciprocal 4 thirds is 3 fourths. So those two lines, when you graph them, they're going to be perpendicular to each other. All right, so that takes care of worksheet F. So 10.4, part F.